Thank you for that. My name is Luke Soderstrom, and this is Stephanie Soderstrom, and it's our privilege today to preach and bring the word. But before we do that, would you join us in prayer? Gracious God, we are, again, so humbled that you would come to us as a child, that you would show up in this world as a baby, and that somehow out of that you would be calling to us. You would be drawing us close. You would be calling us your own. And so today, as we gather here in this first week of Advent, we ask that you would be with us, opening our hearts and our minds, that the words that we speak would be your words, God, and that your Spirit would enliven them. And then in all this, you would draw us closer together as we draw closer to you. It's all in your Son's name. Amen.
Come up here. Oh man. You guys, I'm so glad that it's Advent. Advent is my favorite time in the church year. I love Advent so much. But for a long time, I didn't really understand what Advent is. Like, is it like pre-Christmas? Is it Christmas? Are we singing Christmas songs? Are there different songs? Is it different stuff? I don't know. So I thought maybe I'd take a second and just talk about what Advent is. And I love Betsy's story about Anna and her Christmas time. But Advent is really a season of waiting, as Anna waited in the temple. We are waiting for Christ to come. We're longing for Christ's arrival. And it is different from the celebration that we have when Christmas comes and we celebrate Christ's birth, because during Advent we worship with a sense of expectation for something that we know is about to happen, but it hasn't actually happened yet. Here's a good example. It's like Luke. Luke loves presents. He loves giving presents. He's really good at giving presents, but he also loves to open presents as soon as I buy them. Yes. So as soon as I get a present for him, he wants to know what it is. And I love to give the presents on the holiday, right? Like Christmas morning in the tree, and we open it up. And so I am kind of convincing him to wait and to live into the spirit of Advent, because I won't give him his presents early. And the waiting is hard because he knows the present's there. He knows that it's coming and that he's going to get it. He just doesn't know what it is, and he doesn't have it yet. So it was like that for the people of Israel as they were waiting for the Messiah. In Isaiah 9, the prophet Isaiah foretells the coming of the Messiah like this. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who have lived in the land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as people exult when dividing plunder. For the yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For all the boots of the tramping warriors and all the garments rolled in blood shall be burned as fuel for the fire. For a child has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His authority shall grow continually, and there shall be endless peace for the throne of David and his kingdom. He will establish and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time onward and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. Isaiah prophesied about the coming of Jesus, and he tells the people of Israel that one day, someday, this Savior will come and rule over the whole world. But when Isaiah told the people this, they didn't know when the Messiah would come. They watched, and they waited, and time passed, and the Messiah still hadn't come. In fact, Isaiah lived about 700 years before Jesus was born, so they were waiting for a long time. And today, we know that Christ came and died and rose again, and that Christ's return has been promised. So during the season of Advent, we join in the waiting and the watching and the longing for Christ to come again, while we know that we still get to celebrate the first coming of Christ at Christmas. And one of the things we do during this season is we light candles. The candles mark the passage of time until the day we celebrate Christ's coming on Christmas, and they represent peace, hope, faith, and joy that we have because of Christ. So today we light the first candle as a sign of the peace that Christ brings. Isaiah's prophecy says, "For a child has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Today we light this candle because Christ is the Prince of Peace. But what does that mean, Prince of Peace? Who is the Prince of Peace? And what does the peace that this Prince brings look like? Isaiah has some things to say about that as well.
Just a few chapters later in Isaiah, we hear these words. "A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together. The lion shall eat straw like an ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the earth." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
So, like Steph was saying, these prophecies seem to try to answer two basic questions. The first is, what is this Prince of Peace like? Maybe the second is, what does this reign of peace that this prince brings look like? And I'm going to try and focus a little bit on the first. And so, what is a Prince of Peace? Princes are royal. Did this prince get it from a genie like Aladdin? Does he maintain his claims through intrigue and tragedy like Hamlet? Is he like other princes? Is he handsome but gullible like Prince Eric and like all the other Disney bros? Or is he brutal like Machiavelli's, willing to take any measure to maintain domestic control? The world shows us so many different ways to be a prince, but there's only one Prince of Peace. So one place to go, I thought at least, to find something to get to know this Prince of Peace is in Matthew 4, where two very different princes meet in the desert. Here we see the Prince of Peace encounter the prince of this world. One has fasted for 40 days, like the 40 days on the ark, the 40 days of Lent, which celebrate this story, or more metaphorically, maybe typologically is the fancy word for it, 40 years in the wilderness of Exodus, where the Prince of Peace waits on God. And the other prince, the prince of this world, is clothed something like an angel of light. And the prince of the world says to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to turn into a loaf of bread." Now, again, Christ has not eaten for 40 days. He is the Son of God, and heat haze can make rocks look just like fresh bread. The prince of the world offers a peace to Christ's gnawing stomach, but it is a lie.
One does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord.
The peace of God is so much more than peace of mind or body. True peace is to do the will of God. That's what we see in this first iteration of the story. It was the Spirit of God who actually drove Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted, and Jesus obeyed. And just as the people in the wilderness were fed in God's time by manna, so did the Prince of Peace also seek to wait and trust in the provision of God, not grasping out of fear or greed, but rather trusting. This was his peace, to trust in God's providence in the midst of trials. God's providence providing, that's another fancy word for you. We can laugh, it's okay. But again, he has not eaten for 40 days, and still there is peace, not in his belly, but in knowing that he is in God's will. The bread offered to him was not peace, but a poison, a means to hide, to evade what God had willed. And so Jesus chose the better portion, choosing instead to hunger and thirst for righteousness. The early church fathers said that the reason why Jesus had to do this, to be baptized, to be sent out into the wilderness, and to be tempted, was so that he would show, one, that he had the power to defeat all sin, and to give us an example to repeat, but also to show that nothing was untouched by God. The Prince of Peace is not for himself. He could have stayed in heaven, but rather he is for us. And in this manner, as people of peace, we are also able to respond in like manner. Jesus opens a path for us in this troubled world. And for this reason, he was sent. In this way, he is our peace and opens up the possibility of our participation. And so, next, perhaps feeling a little defeated, the prince of this world took the Prince of Peace up to Jerusalem, to the very tip of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Now this time, the prince of the world comes equipped with Scripture. Still hungry, weary, relying on God, the Prince of Peace is offered a chance to shine before all the religious. This is the Temple Mount, the holiest place in the world. And here he could demonstrate the glory of God. All those who will reject him, because we know the story, will be forced to know that he is the Messiah. This overwhelming glory appears to have the support of Scripture. But Jesus says to him,
Again, it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test.
Jesus trusted God to sustain him in his fast, refusing that bread. But here, the world is offering something else. It's an attempt to create a problem just for God to solve it. One can't create a situation to bully God into action. God is free. And it's one thing to hear from the Lord and obey, as Jesus did going into the wilderness. But it's quite another to blithely run into danger expecting miracles. This is not the way of peace, but rather it is selfish and self-destructive behavior. It's testing God. It's testing God to spend your grocery money on your personal vice, saying, God's got me. One has to eat, but one does not have to take these testing steps. It's not discernment, but rather it's actually a grasping for power over God. A claiming your way is better than God's peace. Your peace better than God's peace. It's an attempt to turn God into a slot machine, or worse, a rigged one. It's not love. It's a form of manipulation. And so finally, the devil took the Prince of Peace to a high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and said to him, all these I will give to you, if you will fall down and worship me. And all the power in the world, and in that moment, all the power of the world was offered to him. Imagine what could be done with that kind of power. All wars would cease, right? Under a threat of destruction, all would be compelled to worship him. This is the world's notion of peace. One backed by overwhelming force. A claim that you can maintain because you have it, the power to back it up. But this would strip everyone of their freedom to decide for God in love, and so in this way, it is but a sham peace. And so Jesus said to him,
Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God, and serve only him.
In the world, the way of peace might appear to be having the most power. Peace may appear to be able to silence others, or the ability to silence others, but this is not righteousness. One cannot force another to believe or even to share peace. The peace of Christ is far more than a ceasefire between enemies or a power to force your way. Jesus rejects enslaving the nations through miracle. Jesus shows this in how he enters the world as a baby, with a soft spot on his head, crying for his mother, utterly in need. There is no domination here. There is only invitation. And the army of angels, who the prince of the world ostensibly sees as able to conquer, what do? They go out to the lowest in society and they proclaim the love of God, the good news that a child is born, the hope of the world, the Prince of Peace. Because the peace of God is not forced. It is an open invitation to all, the oppressed and even the enemies of God, to come and know the freedom of resting in the will of God. And this is what the Prince of Peace is about. Worshiping and serving God only, and from there's an overflow of righteousness. In the Prince of Peace, then we see a supernatural grace breaking into the world, creating new possibilities for faithfulness. Surprising ways of encountering the brokenness, which is not seeking, self-seeking, or grasping for power, but rather leaving space for others to join and to recognize the peace and rest of God. Jesus doesn't force, but shows the free way of loving and following after God. And in this way, this is what we try to do here at church, we recognize and love our neighbors as those who are also invited, who are co-travelers, companion with bread, anyways. That's how jokes to me. It's not that we judge people as unworthy, but rather it is to see them as the beloved of God, and to seek the equity for the meek, and to stand up against injustice, but which doesn't destroy, but brings wholeness.
So, the Prince of Peace is not for his own gain, but is obedient to God. The Prince of Peace is not a prince of force, although he is mighty. The Prince of Peace, the peace Christ brings is found in faithfulness to God. And the Prince of Peace does not seek power for himself, but worships God and only God. We can see in that Matthew 4 story that Jesus is embodying the prophecy of Isaiah. He delights in obeying the Lord. He judges with righteousness and is faithful. If we keep on reading in the second half of that Isaiah 11 passage, knowing that the first part of the prophecy came true in Jesus, we can trust that the vision Isaiah shares for the coming kingdom of God will also come true. And the reign of the peace that Christ is ushering in, as described by Isaiah, is not really what people would expect. I mean, can you actually imagine a wolf and a lamb living together? A lion eating straw like an ox? Wolves eat lambs for breakfast. Lions are carnivores, right? They would rather chow down on the ox than eat the straw like the ox. But that's only the truth in our fallen world. In the kingdom of God, under the reign of the Prince of Peace, these animals can live together without fear that one will eat the other. They could share the same stall in a barn if they wanted to, and it wouldn't be a problem. Christ, the Prince of Peace, can bring this kind of peace. This kind of peace that doesn't even seem possible to us because it's so outside of our understanding of how the world was made. Christ can bring it. This kind of peace is hard for us to live into. We can even see it in the early church. In the book of Acts, some of the Jewish people who were followers of Christ they were making some really difficult demands on the Gentiles who were wanting to follow Christ. The Jews didn't see how the Gentiles could be believers and not be circumcised according to the law of Moses, as all of the Jewish men were. They couldn't imagine that these Gentiles, people who were not born into the Jewish people, but were Romans or Ethiopians or literally any other people group in the world, could enter into God's community without setting themselves apart in that particular way. The Gentiles had oppressed the Jewish people again and again over hundreds of years, and the Jewish people had risen up. again and again, to take back their land. There was a lot of history there. Wars and exiles and bloodshed and just a lot of hard feelings in general. And the Jewish people, Jesus came to save all the people, not just the Jewish people, but all people. He came to be the Redeemer for Israel and for the Gentiles. And so the leaders of the church, specifically Peter, spoke up for the Gentiles and said they didn't have to submit to circumcision. Peter was living into this peace of Christ, not by stepping back and going along, which is sometimes how a lot of us think of when we think of being peaceful, but by standing up and speaking out on behalf of the Gentiles. The kingdom of God makes room for the Gentiles without harsh conditions. The peace of the kingdom is active. It brings wholeness. It doesn't demand that we live under the restrictions of the fallen world, but it frees us to live into the goodness that God intends for us. And today I know that we're all aware of how difficult this type of peace is. It seems like there's so much that's contentious and angry in our society. How could we possibly live into the peace that Christ, the Prince of Peace, is calling us to? And as I thought about that, I thought about another time that was very contentious and angry, and I thought about the 1970s in El Salvador. I thought about someone who exemplifies the peace of Christ by standing up for justice and righteousness, not simply going along to get along. I thought about Oscar Romero. Now, Romero was a priest who spoke out on behalf of the poor in the midst of a growing war between those who were on the left and those who were on the right. And Romero spoke publicly. He broadcast over the radio about cases of torture, disappearances, murders, and he called on the soldiers to stop the violence and the human rights abuses. And this was so dangerous, right? Because neither side wants to hear this message of radical peace, and nobody wants a priest calling them out for their crimes on the radio. But speaking out on behalf of the poor, it eventually led to his assassination, and yet Romero would not be silent because of Christ. The Prince of Peace, who with righteousness judges the poor and decides with equity for the meek of the earth, called him to pursue peace in an active way. The Prince of Peace and the people who follow him work to bring wholeness for all. They pursue peace in action, not by sitting back, trying to keep everyone calm and happy. Here's how Romero said it. Those who, in the biblical phrase, would save their own lives, that is, those who want to get along, who don't want commitments, who don't want to get into problems, who want to stay outside of a situation that demands the involvement of all of us, they will lose their lives. What a terrible thing to have lived quite comfortably, with no suffering, not getting involved in problems, quite tranquil, quite settled, with good connections politically, socially, economically, lacking nothing, having everything. To what good? They will lose their lives. But those who, for the love of me, that is Christ, uproot themselves and accompany the people, and go with the poor in their suffering and become incarnated and feel as their own the pain and the abuse, they will secure their lives, because God my Father will reward them. Christ came to earth and entered into our troubles, suffered, died, and rose again because the shalom, the peace, the wholeness of the kingdom of God required action. Christ will come again to bring the fullness of the peace of the kingdom. During Advent, we remember how the Israelites waited for the first coming of the Messiah, and we join believers around the world in waiting for Christ's return. Until that time, we're called to bring the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And that starts here and now. So how do we do all of this? Because Luke and I just walked through like a lot of different scriptural texts. What are we called to as people of peace? I think we go back to Isaiah. We delight in obeying the Lord. We don't judge with our eyes or by what we hear with our ears. We pursue righteousness and equity, and we work for peace and wholeness with our actions. And we can start all of that right here, right now, by coming to the table together. We know that one day the lion and the lamb will lie down together in God's kingdom. In just such a way, when we come to the communion table today, we're experiencing a glimpse of what the peaceful kingdom of God will be like as we join with those who are different from us. And when we come to communion, we don't just join with those who are part of the Boulevard family. We join with believers from all over the world, those who agree with us and those who don't, those who look like us and those who don't, those who live like us and those who don't. We're all invited to come to communion, to receive the peace that Christ offers, and we're all called to go out and offer that same peace, an active peace that is for justice and equity to others.
And so on the night in which our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was to be betrayed, he gathered with his friends, his companions, those who had followed his ministry, men and women who had supported him, and he invited them into a room. And as they supped, he took the bread and blessed it and broke it. Saying, "This is my body given for you. Take and eat." And in like manner, after they had eaten, he took the cup and blessed it, saying, "This is the blood of the new covenant, poured out for many. Drink you all of it." And so, friends, every time that we come to this table, we are proclaiming the death of Christ until he comes again. These are the gifts of God for us, the people of God, to go out to be that people of peace. Now, a word of instruction, as you come down, please come down the side aisles. We will have members who will be serving. There's also a gluten-free option with its own separate container. Come.